Welcome back, friends. Today we're going to do a 2-year update / review of our Real King tractor. We've owned this RK37 now it's coming up on 2.5 years, and by popular request we're going to do kind of an overview of the last 2 years and how it's been having this tractor. So without further ado, let's jump into some of the pros and cons. First, let's talk about the exterior. So starting at the front, we've got the bucket. This front end loader bucket has been a huge blessing. It is a good sized bucket. You can lay shovels and rakes and pretty much any yard tool that you want right here in the bucket, and it stays in there. It's plenty big enough for hauling, whether it be hauling manure, dirt, brush, you name it. This thing has come in handy. And of course, it being that big, I've had my tools in there before. My nice brand new Farm Boss steel chainsaw was the first thing right after we got this. And I had done some work, left it in there, brought it to the barn, and like a dummy, I left it in the bucket. So the next time I went to pushing up dirt, hauling it, dumping it. On my next load, when I went to dump it, I saw what looked like part of a chainsaw sticking out of my dirt pile. I'm like, huh. So I got out to look, and as about the time I was starting to uncover it, I realized what I had done, and it boogered up my chainsaw. I had to take it to the shop and get it fixed, which was not cool. But that being said, the tractor bucket's amazing. The other attachment that we got were the pallet forks, and I will say I highly recommend pallet forks, even if you don't move pallets. We don't really move pallets around that much. But as far as like just simple stuff, moving firewood, moving logs, we use those bulk containers for firewood and scaffolding, and if you're trimming trees in your yard, you can put one of those on there, strap it on the pallet forks and raise it up. It becomes like a snorkel lift. Feed barrels, getting them in and out of the truck. The possibilities are endless. So I highly recommend pallet forks. We use those more than we use this bucket, for sure. And it's funny because I toyed with getting the grapple or getting forks, because I really wanted a grapple. And I know they're handy as well for moving brush, but that's kind of what they're limited to. Where forks, you can pile the brush up on there or pick the brush piles up and move the firewood onto the sawmill. Like I say, just endless possibilities, and very, very happy with that. Next, I want to talk about the tires. So originally when we bought this tractor, we went off of pictures on the internet, which I explained in the first video as well, or second video. And we got the ag tires. Those things are garbage. At least on this tractor from Real King, they were half the width of these industrial tires, and they had a lot more grip, but those things would beat you to death. They were skinny tires. The ones on the front were like about the width of a motorcycle tire. It was terrible. And the ones in the back, they were so skinny that you'd try to push up dirt, even in 4-wheel drive, it would just bury right in the ground. It would just dig a little trench. And so they ended up switching those out for us to these industrial tires, and this is the way to go. I would definitely recommend the industrial tires. They've got plenty of grip. They're not they don't make divots in the yard or the hayfield or anything. And yeah, very, very happy with the industrial tires for sure. So the last thing I want to talk about on the exterior is it's kind of a twofold deal. So this would be, in my book, a con. And I don't know if you can tell from the video, this hydraulic cylinder is a little bit bent down. And what happened was, it's 100% my fault. I had my forks hooked up, and I was helping my neighbor. She had a big tree come down, big oak tree, and the logs were really big. I cut them up into probably 4-foot sections, 5-foot sections, to where my tractor could handle it. And I had cut them, and they were all still in a line. Well, I wanted to get I was starting kind of in the middle, because the top was here and the butt of the tree was down that way, and I was starting in the middle. So what I was going to do is lower my forks, kind of flip them down, and roll the log out, so that way I could get to the rest of them, because they were kind of wedged in there. Well, amongst trying to back drag, I had my forks down and had this fully extended, and it ended up rolling off the log and banged, and it bent this cylinder. And I didn't catch it at first. I just was like, man, hopefully that didn't mess anything up. I'm looking out there, didn't see anything. I didn't get out and check. Well, when I brought the log to dump it, it was barely moving, barely moving. I'm like, what's going on? So I got out, looked at it, noticed that this was all the way up against this metal bar here. And I'm like, oh dear me, that is not good at all. So I got a 2x4 or 4x4, I can't remember. Got a block of wood and put under, and kept working it little by little until I was able to get it bent back to almost all the way in line, and finished with what I needed to do because it was not functional at the time. Got done with moving her tree, and because it was right in the way of her barn, had to finish. Brought it home, parked it, called Real King. Finally got a hold of somebody. So the guy we originally dealt with is no longer at this Real King store local. He went down to Central Florida. So I'm dealing with somebody else. Got on the phone with this guy that's in the parts department finally. And he wasn't frustrated with me. But you could tell he was frustrated with Real King. And he's like, man, I'm so sorry. I've been telling my bosses for a long time now. We've got corporate coming down here today to have a meeting about it. We have no parts. We don't have parts for anything. A lot of it was due to the pandemic, but we don't have any parts. I can't help you. I'm really sorry. The best thing I can do is tell you to go to a TYM dealership or somewhere else to try to find what you need. So that was a con in my book, because they're selling tractors they can't provide parts for, and that was frustrating to me. So I went to TYM. Of course, TYM thinks it's made out of gold, and this lift cylinder is about $800 or $900, which is a no-go for me. I'm not spending $800 or $900 on something that I was hoping I could rob one off of a used tractor. They would sell me one cheap that was used or something like that, because they had a few tractors in their boneyard that are non-functional anymore, and I would really like to be able to just buy one of these used to put on here. So honestly, I've got it close to where it's not messing anything up on the tractor as far as being out of whack. So I've just been using it, and I've been using this for probably close to a year now, and it's been fine. I don't like doing that. I don't like having a bent cylinder, but I don't have just a $800 or $900 laying around in the backyard either that I can just go and throw it away on something that's technically still working. So that's the only problem I've had so far, and yeah, it was self-inflicted, but yeah, it'd be nice if Real King had parts. While we're on the subject of hydraulics, I did want to say I've used a lot of different brands of tractors, so like Yanmar, Kubota, John Deere, Ford, and all of them, the hydraulics were faster than on these tractors here. So on this tractor and on the loaner tractor that we got, the loader hydraulics especially are super slow. Takes a little while for them to dump. I'm used to working with quicker hydraulics, so you can get work done super fast, scooping dirt, dumping dirt, whatever. So it took me a little bit of adjustment to get used to these being so slow. I'm used to them now, so it's not that big of a deal. Just a slower pace. You know, if you're mowing and are going to go up to a fence and need to turn, you know, you need to raise the bucket. Just make sure you allow enough time to be able to get it up or stop and pull them up. So there's an adjustment knob in the cab that says it's for faster or slower hydraulics, but it only seems to affect the back 3-point hitch hydraulics as far as how fast or slow those go up and down. It doesn't really affect the front loader for some reason. So moving inside, it's a little bit dirty. I apologize. This thing gets used a lot. I'm going to turn the key on here so you can see. Well, there's a bad glare, but 319.3 hours is what we have on here right now. So in the last 313 hours, the only issue that we've had mechanically is when we were baling hay last fall. And I had the baler going, and that little Ford baler that we've got, it's a little square baler. It'll run on a 30 horse tractor, 25 horse tractor. So It's not like it's too much for this tractor at 37 horsepower. It's got plenty of horsepower. It's got a great Yanmar engine in there. And so it wasn't like I was overworking it or anything. But we were not very far into baling, and it started knocking like crazy, blowing a ton of smoke out the exhaust. Scared me to death. So I immediately cut it off, left it sit right there. We've sent it off to Rural King. They come picked it up. They gave us a loaner tractor while they were working on it, which was awesome. And it made it nice to where we were able to finish what we needed to do, and we had a tractor the whole time that they were working on ours, because it took them several weeks to be able to look at it and try to figure out what was going on. So they took it, they looked it over, said nothing was wrong with it. There was too much oil in there, so that was probably my problem, and they wanted to know who did my service. Told them you did. My 50-hour service, we took to Rural King and had them do everything, because it's a pretty detailed service with all of the fluids getting changed and everything. So we had them do it. And he's like, well, that's probably the problem then. I'll take that for what it's worth. It concerned me a little bit, the fact that they're the ones that did the service, and they thought that was what probably caused the problem with too much oil. I told them originally it did not have too much oil to begin with. I checked my oil. I made sure that it was fine. So when I got it back, the oil was perfect. Out there, it was not perfect. There was too much oil in there. So they ended up charging me a service fee, naturally, which I was not too thrilled about, but especially since it's under warranty and there was a problem with it. So I guess they just drained what extra oil they had. I don't know. When I got it back, it wasn't long. I ended up just doing the service on it myself. That was right at 300 hours. So we went in and changed the oil and the filter and everything just to be safe. But near as I can tell, we had an ejector stick open. It's the only thing I can think of. And it flooded into the, it caused fuel to go into the oil. I don't know. I'm not a mechanic. But after talking with several people, that seems to be the consensus between everyone. Was an injector stuck, because it hasn't done it since, and it's been fine ever since. So it was one of those fluke things, I guess. Now, as far as inside the tractor, the AC is wonderful. In the wintertime, the spring, the fall, it blows extremely cold, so much so that you cannot run it on full blast. It will freeze you out. During the heat of the summer, it's not an insulated cab, of course. It's just glass, right? And it's plastic up top. You got to run at full steam, and it keeps it down to about 80 degrees, I would say. Probably between 78 to 80 degrees in the cab is about as cool as it's going to get. It's fine. It's definitely better than sweating. You're in a closed box and it's 100, 105 degrees outside. It's going to be expected to not do wonderful. But the cab, man, that cab is, I would not get a tractor without a cab anymore. The cab is awesome. When you're baling hay, it's extremely dusty, even mowing. Very nasty, dusty. It'll get your allergies kicking. That cab right there, you don't have allergies. It's pleasant. Even if it's looking like rain, it's a misting rain, you can still do your thing, you know. Even in a pouring rain, I've actually used it. So it's definitely a handy feature is the cab. I would recommend it. I would say I only have two cons, two things that I do not like about the inside. And let me turn the camera around and I'll show you. First thing is this right here. This is the 3-point lift arm, and it's tiny. It's a little bitty old handle down in there. Hard to get to, very hard to get to, and that's one of the main things you use in a tractor. So let me let this down. All right. So I can let it all the way down, and it's right there. Well, technically, it's not. It should be all the way up here, right? I didn't notice this until about a month ago. I noticed that my attachments were not coming up off the ground very much, and I had it all the way back. Like I had it all the way back, which would be up. Well, this is a flimsy piece of metal right here, and it's bent down in there. I didn't know that. So whenever I put it forward and actually bent it back forward, it would, whenever I would pull it up, the attachments would come up like they're supposed to, way off the ground. The problem is it keeps bending back, and sooner or later, you bending metal back and forth, this is going to break off. So it's only a matter of time before this breaks. So I've got to figure out a way to get this reinforced before it does. I wish this was a stronger piece of metal, or even a piece of harder pipe or something like the gear shifters are. That would have been ideal, but I've got to figure out a way to get down in here and see what's going on to be able to reinforce that, because that's no bueno. The other problem is right here. So this is the throttle. You've got a throttle right up here that you can run. They're interconnected. Okay. So when you're in here using this, it's gotten worse recently, and I've got to figure out a way to grease it up or whatever. But when you're using this, actually right there you can see. So I push it down. You got to flip it to get it to come back. So down here, if you can see right here, is the throttle cable. Okay, when I move that, so it's catching there, but up in here, it's one of the problem is it's cable. It's one of them wire ropes versus an actual steel rod. So it catches it. It freezes up and it'll stick, which makes your throttle stick. Now it's only gotten bad here recently, but you'll be driving, you'll let off the throttle, and it won't let up. You tap it, it'll push down more, and your engine's revving up even higher, and it takes it a few minutes of tapping to get it to actually come loose, which is very, very annoying and not cool. So I've got to figure out a way to either put a spring on the other end. Ideally, what I'd really like to do is find a steel rodded throttle cable that I can replace this old wire rope style with, and then it would be good to go, because you don't have any pushing strength with a wire rope. It's only like a pull connection. So maybe a spring will fix it. Who knows? It is a little frustrating, but that's pretty much the only two problems that I have currently with this tractor. So I mean, is it a John Deere? Is it a Ford? Is it a Kubota? Absolutely not. But it does pretty much what we need it to do around here on the farm. Sometimes I wish I would have gotten the 55 horse instead of the 37 horse. We have 11 acres here, and it does a good job keeping up, but it would be nice sometimes to have something with a little bit more power, a little more lifting power. But all in all, it's a very strong tractor. I've been very, very pleased. Like I say, it's got its few quirks. After you're running it for a few hours, the frame, the entire frame, which includes where your feet sit, gets really hot. I mean, that steel gets extremely warm. I have no idea why. It's done that since day one. All the back around the case, the hydraulic oil, all that area, maybe the fluids warm it up. I really don't know. But every so often I'll pop the hood, I'll spray the radiator out, I'll spray the air conditioner cooler out, because that's one thing that is not covered under warranty, is if the tractor overheats and dies. So that's something you want to keep in mind if your tractor is under warranty. The one thing that's on, I think, all new tractors, and I absolutely hate, is that stupid regeneration system. From what I understand, it either has to have the regen or it has to have the DEF fluid, which is idiotic. I mean, it's farm equipment, for Pete's sake. So regen doesn't warn you when it's going to do it. It just pops up a light. Congratulations, you're right in the middle of regeneration. And it's usually, if you're not paying attention, you'll smell it first if you don't see the light come on, because it's just a little bitty light. And it smells like your tractor's burning up. So freaked me out the very first time it ever happened. And it's not any increments of hours. I mean, it's happened at 50 hours, then it didn't happen again until like 150 to 200 hours. And then it's happened like 3 times since. So they say you want to rev the engine up and just let it sit, not really use the tractor, which is kind of a pain in the butt when you're out baling hay and it starts. So it is what it is, you know. It's modern day politics involved in our equipment, farm equipment. So anyway, I would still, if I had it all to do over again, I would still definitely buy this tractor. Like I say, the service isn't that great. as far as parts, the guy that we dealt with, that we bought the tractor from originally, Brian, he's the man. I think the Rural King tractor program as a whole is struggling. I think that's just their business, problems within their business. I don't know if they'll last. I really don't. I know they're going through a lot of changes right now, and who knows? But I mean, it's a decent tractor for the money. So hopefully this is helpful to somebody. Thank y'all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.